everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Thumb FPV. Today we're going to check out a drone build that I did. This is a 3-inch quad. This is an analog build on a schizo frame. I have a Diatone Mach 4 Mamba on here, my run cam. This is the Harley Quinn / cotton candy build that I've been working on. It's pretty cool. Nice little drone right here. We're going to go over this real quick and see exactly what I got in here for parts, how I built it. Check this out. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of what we have in this drone for what I am calling the cotton candy build. One thing that we have here off the side, this is our Gemfan Flash 3052 tri-blade. These are 3-inch. They do actually come in the same color, even though they're not sold multicolored together. This is our Schizo Nova frame here. We have our Mamba V405 Mini stack right here. This is the MK2. These motors right here are the 1506 RC IN powers, the pink and blue ones. Pretty cool looking. Our VTX that we're going to be using is the Zeus Nano with the adjustable sides on that there, and then we have our Runcam Phoenix 2 Nano for the camera here. I don't have it on the board here in front of me, but I'm just going to make this a general FrSky build with an XM Plus receiver. So for the first part of this, we're not going to do a whole lot. We just need a few things here. We're going to need our bottom plate for our frame, our little bolts right here for the ESC on the bottom, our motor screws here, our motors, our spacers to put between the bottom of the ESC and the bottom board for the frame, and then just our little nuts right here to hold them in place to make sure that nothing slips off. Here's our bottom frame plate, motors attached, bars for the stack in place. I had to take and put both of the spacer gummies on the bottom of this. The plug from the ESC to the flight controller is on the bottom of it. I was sitting there and I was like, why is it one, then this, and then literally I had it upside down, and I got to looking at it and I was like, oh, well, that's kind of weird, because literally that's on the bottom. I mean, it's nice, it's out of the way, it gives a little extra protection hopefully, but that's why that is the way that is. Next thing, I'm going to work on tinning these wires up real quick. So now we have that done. I know I said tinning the wires, but I actually meant tin the pads for the board. We have all the ESC tabs here tinned. We have the power and ground done here for the back, as well as the other side of the ESCs here. It's just something I just do to my drones as of, I don't know, like the last year building or whatever. I seen it on a build and I adapted it really quick because I really like the style of it, and it also keeps the wires all nice and neat together. I do braid all my wires, keeps them nice and intact, and sometimes, you know, the prop will come pretty close to the frame, right? So you got all this extra wire and then you get something damaged on there or whatever. It's not ideal, but then you just take and unbraid it, and then you'll have the extra length of wire sometimes to go right to the ESC, and you won't have to worry about replacing the whole motor or splicing in wire and resoldering everything, because that always sucks. But got the wires all braided up there, and now I'm going to trim them and get them ready for tinning. So I've got the wires trimmed back just long enough to come around from the inside. I like my wires for my motors to be on the inside of the ESCs. Might throw a little extra noise over the flight controller or under the flight controller, but I like them tucked up and out of the way. I also waste cable ties like ridiculous. I've used 8 on this already. I go through them like they're nothing, but they're a lot more helpful and handy than trying to have somebody else hold them, or hold 3 things with this finger and then bend this around. I just zip tie the hell out of everything. So now I'm going to get everything soldered up right after I get the wires tinned. So now the wires are all tinned. I was cut them right around 3/16 of an inch when I pull the stuff off of them, and then I just turn around and I cut them back about halfway. That way there's not too much exposed. I cut them extra because I heat them at the tip. And then I let the solder flow back down. If you get it too close to the wire covering, you can fry it. It gets all brittle and stiff, and then it doesn't like to bend right at the end when you need it to bend. So I like to keep it nice and soft and in its original condition. That way I can have it wrap around the stack bolts or whatever it is that I'm trying to do with it later. Now it is ready to get soldered on to the ESC. So you got everything soldered up. I didn't feel like doing a video on the soldering or a time lapse or anything like that because it's kind of tedious getting in all those tiny little places. It's not the greatest job, but it'll work. It's good enough. They're nice, they're shiny, they're clean, there's no cracks, they're not frosty, they're not discolored. All 4 motors are hooked up. Next step is hooking up the XT30 and the ES or the capacitor. And conveniently enough, upon opening the box and going through and pulling everything out, I have my capacitor, I have another flight controller set of wires here, I have the interface blocker for the ESC and the flight controller. They did not give me an XT30 cap. Just the wires. Luckily enough, I keep my own in stock. So we're going to get this hooked up real quick. To prep mine, I take and I use the, I use my own method on this. I take and I wrap the wire for the capacitors around the wires for the XT30, and then I turn around, I tin those together, and then I add them to the ESC. So now we have our XT30 on. I'm going to go ahead and add the shield here and put this to the bottom of the flight controller. Make sure the buttons are all pushed down. The power and ground on this are still hot as heck, but I got this. So I'm just going to take and drop this down over the top. There's just enough room to fit the cap right there, or the little tiny nut on the top. Give it a little twist down, just bring it flush. Like so. Some people will do it beforehand, some people do it after. I just leave, as long as the threads come through the top, that's enough that you can take and get your Loctite or your super glue, whatever you want to use. And then you can just put a drop right there at the top and prevent those from coming loose during flight. Plus it's easy to break it right off that way, and you can get the nuts are super replaceable, they're super cheap. So I have the flight controller plugged in, XT60, XT30, and the capacitor on, motors all wired up, and the flight controller on. Next step, we're going to go over exactly where we're going to put our VTX, our camera, and our receiver at. First things first, I'm going to actually go ahead and mount the camera. I wasn't planning on doing this initially, but to have it steady and where it's exactly supposed to go with the minimum amount of wire traveling to the flight controller, I'm going to head and put this on. That way I know exactly what I have to work with. So I got the camera installed. Sometimes those little tiny baby screws are a little bit of a pain in the butt to get in there just right. I'm going to get this figured out, where it's going to go what, and get this tinned up for the camera to go on. Alright, we're going to get a little solder on these pads here. We're going to go for the first 3 on the top left hand side, right here. These are the 5 volt, the ground, and then the video in. Extra wire out there. 4, 3, 2. Like so. So now that I know where these are going to go, I'm just going to bring this around right here, bend it like so, get my snips, basically about how much wire I need, back it off a little bit, and trim. I'm going to clean off the wire, tin the wire, and connect it to the flight controller. Okay, so we have everything for the camera hooked up here. We have our 5 volt, our ground, and our camera out. Now we're going to get our Zeus Nano VTX hooked up here. Okay, so here's our little tiny VTX here. Now for the pads on this, from the bottom up we have our RX, we have our video, we have our 5 volt, and then we have our ground. There's also an additional 5 volt and ground pad on top of that. So if you wanted to run camera power, whatever, whether you burned out these 2 pads or whatever, you could back it up with the other 2 pads. Okay, so I'm gonna get these bottom 4 pads soldered up and ready to go. So pretty much everything is hooked up except for the receiver. This right now is basically a pin and play quad. We have the ESCs hooked up, the flight controllers hooked up, we have our camera hooked up, and the VTX is hooked up here to the side. I'm going to use the protector plate here, block the flight controller from the ESC, or block the flight controller from the VTX, I mean. See if I can do something real quick here. Just spin this all the way around, come out the middle, there we go. Boom. All I gotta do is put the nuts on. Like so. My driver right here, give him a little twist from the bottom, snug him down. Not too much, just tight. Use this possibly for something later. I'm not ready to cut that off yet, so we're just gonna stash it down inside there like so. So that should be it. I'm gonna do a continuity test on it real quick. Get out the good old multimeter here. Make sure everything is good to go. Slight little beep. That's for the capacitor. Give it one more try up here at the top. Nothing. I didn't charge it up or anything, but I do happen to have a small battery right here. Mini Star. This is a 4S70C 450 milliamp battery. Just gonna plug it in and see what happens. Should be good to go. Ta-da! Let me put the rest of it together. So I hope you guys enjoyed that build. Didn't take too long. I said this is a nice little quad right here. Can't wait to get it out and fly it. As of right now, it is still in the pin and play stages. I thought I had a receiver to throw on it, and I did not. So we're still waiting on that. But when it's out and ready to go, I will definitely have a video on that for its maiden flight. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. I'll have another video up soon.